Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company of the 440 Sports Network, presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. And we are part of the Believe YouTube podcast network here on the program today. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends. We are getting dangerously close to 5,000 subscribers on YouTube. I mean, I'd love for it to be 50,000, 500,000, but I will take what I can get on this little YouTube show, which, by the way, has more subscribers than people that had years and years a head start on me. So, go ahead, tell your friends, like and subscribe. It says no sound here. Are we sure there's no sound? It seems to me like we should have sound. This guy says no sound. Is there no sound? Oh, this guy. Never mind. It was me, the guy says. Buddy, throwing me off my game to begin the program. Killing me. All right, anywho. Like and subscribe. Tell all your friends. Blah, blah, blah. Who cares? Whatever. Okay. I do first want to tell you about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, and then we will get to my reaction to the Calvin Ridley news of the weekend, which I think was very important news. First of all, I want to tell you about Hiller. I freaking love Hiller. They take great care of my home. They could do the same for you. If you had issues with the storms last night, get Hiller in there to fix it. They will take great care of whatever's gone wrong in your house. I tell people this all the time when it comes to me and Hiller. If I've ever got an issue, Hiller comes out and fixes it, and that's the end of it. And that's everything. That's a backed up drain. That's a messed up sink. That's a dishwasher that I needed installed one time. It's anything with Hiller. They take great care of it. I mean, even the lights here in the Stillman and Company studios, that's Hiller, who came in here in a day and did all of that. They are the best. They've been in business since 1990, family owned and operated, 100% satisfaction. Happy you'll be, or the service is free. Learn more at happyhiller.com with professional, experienced, trustworthy technicians who come into your home and leave it clean and better than they found it. Care is their core value, and they believe that when they care about others, everybody wins. They'll take care of the customer every time on every job. And again, I know this because I use Hiller at my home. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today. Okay, let's get to the Calvin Ridley news. So on Saturday, it came out that the Titans had, quote unquote, restructured Calvin Ridley ahead of the 5th day of the league year, which, by the way, is today. And by restructuring Calvin Ridley's contract, the Titans announced that Calvin Ridley is staying with the Titans, and Calvin Ridley remains in the wide receiver group. And right now, I think the Titans have a starting receiver trio of Ridley, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Chim DK. Now, as far as the term restructure, Kaharski has it out there at paulkaharski.com that Ridley lowered his cap hit by $11 million. But he doesn't know how he lowered the cap hit. So I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't think they restructured shit. I think Calvin Ridley took a pay cut. And I don't know what he took a pay cut to. But if you remember a couple weeks ago when we did the free agent boards on the program, and we were talking about Romeo Doubs and Wan'Dale Robinson and Rashid Shaheed, and we were going through that wide receiver group. We included Deebo Samuel and Jawan Jennings and other guys as part of the talks. At the end, I included Calvin Ridley. And I said, because if you're going to make a move to go get a Deebo Samuel, are you better off just getting Calvin Ridley to take a pay cut? And as I wrote on the wide receiver board when comparing Ridley to everybody else, I said, and this was under the box that says Jared's contract, says, quote, would Ridley take a pay cut to $16 million for 2025? Would there be trade interest in Ridley if we, talking about the Titans, if we ate the money? And I don't know, if the Titans explored a trade for Ridley or if the Titans gave Ridley the option to explore a trade. Sometimes that does happen, and the agents don't just immediately run to ESPN and tell them. So I don't know. But when it comes to Calvin Ridley, again, he took a pay cut. And I think for everybody out there who says Jared Stillman is never happy with anything the Titans do, Jared Stillman always complains, Jared Stillman's just looking to bitch, let me say this. I think this is a great move. I think this is the right call by the Titans. I think this was incredibly well played by the Titans. I think it is the right call to keep Calvin Ridley. I also think it is the right call to get Calvin Ridley to take a pay cut from the $21 million in cash he was going to make this year to somewhere in the more reasonable range, probably around 15 to 16 million. And I think the Titans played it well because they waited until Calvin Ridley's other options would have dried up. So for everybody out there that says, Jared Stillman only complains about the Titans, you hate the Titans, you never give them credit for anything. When I saw the reporting on Saturday that said the Titans had, quote unquote, restructured Calvin Ridley's contract and that Calvin Ridley was going to stay on the football team this upcoming season, I had a big sigh of relief because I do think you're a better football team with Calvin Ridley than you would be without Calvin Ridley. It's not like Calvin Ridley had a bad season last year. Calvin Ridley played the first 7 games and he got hurt. And he played on a team that stunk. And he still, you look at his PFF grade and his yards per reception, Ridley was fine last year before he got hurt. And Calvin Ridley was a 1,000-yard receiver the year before with Will Levis as his quarterback. Now, is Calvin Ridley Justin Jefferson? Absolutely not. He is not Justin Jefferson. Is he Jamar Chase? No. He's none of those guys. But again, when we're talking about Romeo Doubs or Rashid Shaheed or Jawan Jennings or the guys that were out there, Ridley absolutely fits in that group. The problem is you were going to pay him $21 million and Ridley wasn't worth that. And I did wonder, when push came to shove on a Ridley contract, would Ridley take a pay cut? Because one thing that is very difficult is for a guy who was considered an alpha, who is a leader in the locker room, who's making X amount of dollars, to then take a pay cut from the team and go back into the same locker room. Jim Wyatt actually told me in all his years when he was at the Tennessee and covering the Titans, there were guys who would take less money somewhere else that wouldn't take that less money in the place where they currently were because of the pride that some of these players have. And when Jim Wyatt said that to me, I immediately had my head go right to Eddie George, because I believe the money that Eddie George signed with the Dallas Cowboys for in 2004 was the same money that the Tennessee Titans needed Eddie George to get to in order to keep him. And Eddie George said no, because Eddie George felt disrespected. And I understand it. So I wondered when it came to Ridley, if the Titans were going to look at their football team and they were going to see Calvin Ridley and they were going to say, well, we're paying him $21 million and that's too much money for Calvin Ridley, who played in 7 games last year and had 300 yards receiving. And so we can't pay him $21 million, so let's cut him. Because if you do that, then today you're looking at a starting wide receiving group of Wan'Dale Robinson, Chim Dike, and Alec Iomanner. And I know a lot of you think Alec Iomanner had a great rookie season. I do not. I think Alec Iomanner is a depth receiver. I do not think he is a starting receiver in the National Football League, which means if you got rid of Ridley, you are going to have to go replace Ridley, whether that's free agency or the draft. And so now the Titans, building a team around Cam Ward. They're probably going to go edge with the 4th overall pick. So it gives them options because now they don't have to take a receiver with one of their first 2 picks because they've got 3 starting receivers. And Io Manor right now is the number 4 guy. And that's what I think Alec Io Manor is in the NFL, which is a 4th wide receiver. So I think it was the right decision for the Titans to figure out a way to work out a new contract with Calvin Ridley that is, again, a pay cut. I think it was smart for Calvin Ridley to do this because, again, going back to giving the Titans credit for what they did, the Titans did not have a trigger in Ridley's contract that guaranteed money for next season today or guaranteed a significant amount of money today in which they couldn't get rid of him. The Titans could have, in theory, held on to Calvin Ridley and then released him if they had gotten another receiver or whatever, and they would have been in the whole $4 million, which is really nothing. They could have waited until there was no money out there for Calvin Ridley. My guess is the Titans set aside, let's call it $35 million for 2 receivers. And whether it was Ridley and somebody else or 2 new people, they probably budgeted $35 million. Again, something like that. So they signed Wan'Dale Robinson on the first day. Remember, PK said they were in on Alec Pierce, they were in on Romeo Doubs, and they were in on Wan'Dale Robinson. Well, they were in, I guess, on Romeo Doubs and Wan'Dale Robinson. Well, what if they signed both guys? Then they cut Ridley. So the Titans had waited until a lot of the money was dried up. And then they went to Calvin Ridley and said, hey, we're going to need you to take a pay cut. And a lot of times, and this is where Calvin Ridley made the right call, a lot of times the receiver, the player, looks at the organization and says, fuck you, I'm not taking a pay cut. Cut me. And most of the time when an organization says we need you to take a pay cut, they usually cut the guy who doesn't take the pay cut. I think Kevin Byard said it best when he said, I've never heard of a guy not taking a pay cut and keeping his job. So they go to Ridley, they ask for a pay cut. If you're Ridley, there's the pride element here that says, fuck you, I'm not taking a pay cut, I'm worth $21 million. Or there's the reality of it that is, if I take a pay cut, and again, we don't know yet the number to which Ridley took the pay cut to, but if I take a pay cut to $16 million, that's still $16 million. I don't have to move. I don't have to go out into the free agent market. Right now, after the first couple of days of free agency, the money dries up. The idea of me scoring 16, 15, 14 million, whatever it is that he's making, that's gone. So I can either be prideful and make less money, or I can take the deal the Titans are offering me. Koharski reported that there are incentives in the contract for Ridley to make up the difference. My guess is Ridley says, screw it, let's go. And that's the smart, unemotional decision. And Calvin Ridley made it. So the team took full advantage of their contractual terms with Ridley, which they are entitled to do. And I have no problem with that. And Ridley made a smart business decision for Ridley. And now the Titans don't have to draft a receiver with one of their first 2 picks in this year's draft. Would it be nice if they did draft a receiver? Absolutely. But they have 3 starting receivers for their young quarterback. So, again, I just want to throw this out there for every single person who says, Jared Stillman only bitches about the Titans. No, Jared Stillman only bitches about the Titans when they do stupid things. Jared Stillman does not complain about the Titans when they do smart things. This right here, I think, was a smart move. I think it was a great decision to wait on Ridley, to wait on what you wanted to do in the wide receiver market. I think it's smart to look at Calvin Ridley and say, yes, he's getting up there in age, but everything that we saw last year says he's the same Calvin Ridley, and Calvin Ridley can play. He's not, again, Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson, but he absolutely can play in the NFL. And I think it shows that Ridley has, and I think David Mulligetta is his agent, but it shows that Ridley's agent got a feel for the market, and there probably wasn't much money out there for Ridley if he would have been competing with guys that are still available, like a Stephon Diggs or like a Deebo Samuel or somebody like that on the free agent market. I mean, again, Mike Evans is taking what, like 19? So I think this was smart all the way around, and I think this is good for the young quarterback, and I think this is good for the organization. I think it's good for the receiver room to have continuity with Ridley and Io Manor and DK, and yes, it'll be new with Wan'Dale Robinson, and I think I see the receiver plan coming together, which is Wan'Dale Robinson is going to be the high-volume target guy, that slot receiver that he and Cam just pitch and catch. Chim DK is going to be the deep ball threat. Chim DK is the guy who's going to run the straight line down the field. You hope to get him single covered. It'd be nice to run some play action. Safeties come up in the box. They bite on the fake, and boom, throw it over the top, Chris Sanders-style touchdown. And then Calvin Ridley is kind of the do-it-all. Ridley can run down the field. Ridley can be a high-volume target guy. Ridley's a great route runner. The only problem with Ridley is that he drops the football. But that's okay. Again, if he was perfect, he wouldn't be taking a pay cut today. So he's a little up there in age, and he drops the football. Other than that, Ridley's fine. I don't think in 2 years there have been any attitude issues surrounding Calvin Ridley. I think it's good to have him on the team. I think this is good news for the Titans. So go ahead and stamp me down and say, wow. The next time you say Jared Stillman never, ever, ever gives credit to the Titans, remember this one. So that's the first thing. The second thing, I've already made my peace with the new Titans logo and the new Titans uniforms. As many of you already know, I hate them. And I don't hate them because they're ugly, because they're not. But I hate them because I, as a Titan fan, feel like a pawn in the Amy Adams Strunk v. Houston battle. I feel like, as somebody put it on Twitter over the weekend, Hannah McNair bullied Amy Adams Strunk into basically crapping away all of the Titans' history. And that is how I feel. But again, I've made my peace with it. I let it go. It is what it is. They're not going to change it back. But there was one thing over the weekend I just did not understand. And so somehow I got drug into this. I don't know how I got drug into this. Maybe it's because I'm the only person that got up there and said, what is the owner doing? She's doing this because of the Texans. She's doing this because of the city of Houston. Again, it made me feel like I've been married to the Titans for 30 years, and the Titans still don't love me like they love their ex. And yet, the move to the Oiler-themed uniforms, I believe, had the exact outcome that Amy Adams Strunk desired. And that is her own fans saying, yes, we love these uniforms. And I think that happened. And the city of Houston saying, fuck you guys, you don't deserve to wear the Oiler uniforms. You're not the Oilers. That's our history. And Amy Adams Strunk and the Titans can cross their arms and laugh at the city of Houston. Ha, 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 ha. Again, I don't care about the city of Houston. I don't. I don't care about the McNair family. I don't care about the Texans. I don't. Just like I don't really care about Jacksonville. I don't like the Ravens more than I don't like the Texans. But I was shocked at how many Titan fans felt the need to defend the owner and get into this war of words with the salty fans in Houston who think that the Titans' new uniforms are just a slap in the face to the Houston Texan fan base. The first thing everybody should acknowledge is it is absolutely a slap in the face of the Houston Texan fan base. When the Titans left Houston and they moved to Nashville, they rebranded the team, a new color scheme, a new uniform. The Oilers, dead and buried, owned by Bud Adams, but gone forever. And this only started when J.J. Watt and the McNair family and Deshaun Watson wore a Warren Moon jersey to a game, started claiming like, we should get the rights to the Oilers, which they never owned, they never were going to have, and they never should have had. And I like the throwback uniforms when they wear them a couple times a season. But I don't understand why in the world the Houston fans would be fighting with Titans fans about this. I understand why the Houston fans would be upset about it. I don't understand why Titans fans would feel the need to get into a fight with Houston fans about this. I mean, there are videos out there that are like, I need these sorry-ass Texan fans to understand something right now. It's like, why do you care that the Houston fans are upset about the Titans Oilers uniforms? The whole reason she did this was to piss off the Titans or to piss off the Oiler fans in Houston. That's the only reason she did it. Either that or because that's her childhood and I want those jerseys we used to wear when I was a baby. But again, I just think it's ridiculous that Titan fans feel the need to defend the organization at every turn. And to be honest with you, I can't defend the organization on this. I believe she did this because she wanted to lay claim to that color scheme and those uniforms and that history and everything else, even though they had it. She felt the need to flex her muscle on Houston. My only issue with that is, what about us? What about your season ticket holders? What about your fans? What about your fans that were there in 1999 that remember the Christmas Day game in 2000 against the Dallas Cowboys and Dave Campo when Troy Aikman was hurt and Anthony Wright started at quarterback and the Titans beat the Cowboys something like 35-0. And they locked up the number 1 seed. And who remembers that huge winning streak at the end of 2002 that culminated in a trip to the AFC title game? Like that stuff, I feel like we're just kind of now just throwing into the closet and locking away. But again, Titan fans fighting with Texan fans, it doesn't make any sense to me. What do you care about what Texan fans think? And as soon as I say this, as soon as I say Titan fans, why do you care that Houston fans are upset about the Titans sticking their middle finger in the face of the Houston fan? If somebody stuck their middle finger in your face, you'd be mad about it too. So this should be the expected outcome. The Houston fans should be mad, and the Houston fans are mad. That's what Amy wanted. So why, as Titan fans, are you getting into it with Texan fans about you shouldn't be mad? We own the colors. We own the uniform. Why do you feel the need to defend her on this? I do not get it. If anything, I feel like a pawn in this. We as Titan fans are the ones that they are using in order to continue their war with the city of Houston. That's got nothing to do with me. But again, this weekend, I mean, it was the city of Houston versus Titan fans, and I was surprised at how many Titan fans were taking it personally. Houston fans should take this personally. It is about them. Titan fans, Again, the only thing I take personal is I feel like we're saying goodbye to the logos and the uniforms and the color schemes and the team that I used to root for, we're saying goodbye to. That's what I have a problem with. I don't have a problem with the people of Houston being mad at Amy Adams-Strunk. And I have to ask, why are we defending Amy Adams-Strunk on this? Why are we defending Amy Adams-Strunk in general? We can all agree she's done a bad job running the team. I think even deep down inside, she knows she's done a bad job running the team lately. I think at first, when she fired John Robinson, which I believe started all of this, when she fired Robinson and she hired Rand Carthon, she really thought she was doing what was best for the organization. Then, after that, when she fired Vrabel, she probably looked at it and said, you know what, I felt like we needed a redo, and I tried to half measure it because Vrabel's a good coach, and so I tried to do it, but it didn't work, so now let's just rip the Band-Aid off. Let's move on from Vrabel. And they hired Callahan. And now Rand and Brinker and Anthony Robinson and Brian Callahan and Bill Callahan are all sitting around the campfire. Burke Nihill's in there too. My son-in-law, Bryce Wasserman. We've all got our guitars out, or one person has a guitar out, and we're all singing Kumbaya. And this is my dream that's going to lead us to a Super Bowl. And it's led them to 3-win seasons in a row. And so now I feel like Amy is operating from the standpoint of, okay, I don't know what I don't know. I trust Chad, which I don't know why she does, but I trust Chad. So Chad, you're going to find me a GM. And now I trust that GM, and you're going to find me a coach. But I also don't think that TD got it wrong. I mean, TD's a pretty veteran reporter. So here's who I want to coach, Mike. And that's what they've done. And again, maybe it'll work. I don't know. I don't think it will. But again, the reason you're in this mess is because of Amy. And yet I just do not understand why the Titan fans feel the need to defend Amy. Amy has been indefensible lately. And this is coming from somebody who has a lot of respect for Amy the person. And I just want to separate how I feel about Amy the person, whom I do like Amy Adams-Strunk. I don't know her very well. What I do know of her, I like her. I've had good interactions with her, and I've told the story about how she took care of Floyd at the end many times. Amy the owner is why this team's winning 3 games every year, and I don't like that. But I just don't get why people are defending Amy versus the city of Houston. Amy wants the city of Houston to be mad. When you get mad that Texans fans are mad, don't you understand that's what they want? They don't want you to defend her for it. They want the Houston fans to be mad. One person says, don't defend Amy. She's flipping through head coaches and general managers like she's changing the channel on the TV remote. She's a businesswoman. She should know businesses don't work like that. She's not a businesswoman. She was a horsewoman who got drug in to running the team because her father's succession plan was so bad with Tommy Smith trying to run the operation. This one person says, we are the Tennessee Oilers. One person said, we were the Tennessee Oilers for a season. First of all, you were the Tennessee Oilers for 2 seasons. And I remember my dad being like, we're not buying Oiler crap. Like, we're not buying Oiler stuff. We're waiting until next year, and we're going to buy Titan stuff. And I just always looked at the Tennessee Oiler era of the franchise as kind of this vagabond franchise that had nowhere to be. Nobody wanted them. They weren't wanted in Memphis, so they played a year at Vanderbilt. And even then, there was a game against the Chicago Bears I wanted to watch on TV, and I couldn't watch it on TV because they didn't sell out the tickets. And the way the rules were in the NFL, if you didn't sell out your tickets, your game got blacked out. And so I remember turning on the TV one day, and there was an episode of Jag And I was like, where's the Chicago Bear game? And they were like, it said at the bottom, your game's blacked out. Vanderbilt seats 40,000. They couldn't sell 40,000 tickets to Tennessee Oilers. Then they became the Tennessee Titans. They got to the Super Bowl. They were the hottest ticket in town. Again, I just don't understand, why do the Titans fans feel the need to fight on behalf of the owner? Give me a break. Okay, our other Titan topic of the day, and then we will get to your Titans reaction, has to do with L'Jarius Sneed, who was released on Friday. The Titans released L'Jarius Sneed. Kaharski reported that L'Jarius Sneed was released with a full, clean bill of health. And there was some questions about that, because if Sneed was injured and failed the physical, Sneed could claim $7.5 million on this year's salary, and he'll get none of that. And it hit me when thinking about L'Jarius Sneed today. I started to connect the dots. I had one of those Brian Windhorst moments where all of a sudden I was like, oh, that's it. So the Kansas City Chiefs decided to take their resources away from cornerback and put it to Kenneth Walker. They traded away Trent McDuffie, who they were going to have to give a contract to, and they let Jalen Watson go to the Rams in free agency. And the Chiefs are going to need corners, and they're going to need corners on the cheap. And then the Chiefs went out and paid top dollar for Kenneth Walker to be a $14 million running back. Today, they made the deal for Justin Fields. They'll pay him $3 million. The Jets will pay him $7 million. And so they're still kind of going cheap at backup quarterback, but they get something out of it because Fields is probably a better backup quarterback than anybody else they could have gotten for $3 million. And then it hit me. Oh my God. They're going to sign L'Jarius Sneed. And that's why L'Jarius Sneed wanted a clean physical before he got released. Because if you get released with an injury designation, you're telling the league this guy is not healthy enough to sign with your team. It wouldn't be surprising to me if under the table, and you can't really do this under the table, but if the Titans reach an injury settlement with Sneed. Okay, we'll release you, but we'll convert this. We'll give you $4 million. Now get the hell out of here. Because I think L'Jarius Sneed wanted the league to know that L'Jarius Sneed was healthy, even though L'Jarius Sneed's never going to be healthy, and the Chiefs already know about his knee, so that he can go sign with the Chiefs on a one-year prove-it deal, and he'll say, well, I'll get a year to go back to Steve Spagnuolo, and Andy Reid knows how to coach me, and the Chiefs know how to take care of me, and it's not some bullshit franchise that's winning 3 games, and we've got Mahomes and Kelsey and Kenneth Walker and Creed Humphrey, and so I'm going to be on this team that I know and I love. And the Chiefs, they probably knew this when they made the move on McDuffie and Jalen Watson. They knew, hey, we're going to lose these 2 corners, but the good news is we'll have an extra first-round pick so we can draft the corner in the first round, and we're going to re-sign L'Jarius Sneed. I used to have 2 lists on the radio. I used to have the calling it list and the guarantee list. And I would, when I guarantee, I'd say, and that was when I was absolutely sure of something. And then the calling it list was when I felt pretty confident in something happening. And it hit me today. I'm calling it. L'Jarius Sneed's going back to the Chiefs. 1 year, up to $6 million. And L'Jarius Sneed will be starting at corner next year for the Chiefs. And I bet you L'Jarius Sneed plays 14 games next year. At least 14 games next year for the Chiefs. And boy, that's going to piss a lot of you people off. And it should. But that's why I think that Sneed left the team with, I was stunned when Kaharski said he passed a physical and he got released. I'm like, he passed a physical? How? Well, he probably wanted to pass the physical. And they probably wanted him to pass the physical. So Sneed gets released. And now he goes back to the Chiefs. And the Chiefs, who like me, I think are realizing that corner is a traditionally overvalued position, will sign L'Jarius Sneed for $5 million. Okay, let's get to some of your reaction here on the program on the Titans. TDG says, Center guard, I'm getting a little worried. I'm not going to lie. I think it's probably inevitable they're going to re-sign Kevin Zeitler, right? I guess I'm the only person that just, I'm not going to say that I'm not stressing about right guard, because to a certain extent, when people tell me things like, look at how much we improved, Jared, I'm like, you don't have a starting center or a starting guard. I think Austin Schlottman is going to be their starting center. And I think they're going to re-sign Zeitler. So I think in the end, it's going to be Dan Moore, Skoronski, Schlottman, Zeitler, and J.C. Latham. But I understand why you're nervous, and I'm nervous too. And I think the center market, where I do think they played the Ridley situation well, and I gave them credit for that, I think the center market they looked at and said, okay, there's 4 guys that we feel comfortable with. Linderbaum, Biotish, Fortner, and McGovern. And we may not get Linderbaum because we may not have the money, but we'll get one of those 4 guys. And then all of a sudden, before free agency even opened, Biotish signed with the Chargers for $10 million a year. And I think they were like, wait a minute, what? And then McGovern stayed in Buffalo. And so now they're kind of out of options at center. And I think this Austin Schlottman, I think this is Brian Daboll saying he can do it. And that's what I always tell you about listening to the coaches. My dad and I were talking about this yesterday. When it comes to listening to the coaches, I think oftentimes these coaches love to take guys that are C players and think to themselves, I can coach him. I can get him to be a B player. They won't look at a C player and think that they're smart enough to coach him into an A player. But I think they look at an Andre Dillard and they say, I can coach him, until about 18 people have had the opportunity to coach Andre Dillard, and Andre Dillard still sucks. And then they're like, okay, that's it. He just sucks. I think Will Levis is going to be an example of this, because I think there's going to be somebody out there that thinks I can coach him. Matt Jones, everybody thought was dog shit. Kyle Shanahan, I can coach him. And so I think Schlottman is the center. And I think that this goes back to I can coach him, for whatever that's worth. MB says it's March. I'm not worried about the center position right now. They could trade Levis and get a starting center back. Who knows? You're not getting a center and a starting center. You're not getting a starting center in exchange for Will Levis. So stop acting like that. Again, I think when it comes to these problems, if Brian Daboll is wrong, if I'm right in thinking that Austin Schlottman's going to be the center, and Brian Daboll is wrong and he can't coach Austin Schlottman into being the starting center, then in October, that will be a problem that I will look back to and say, that is a March problem. I do not do this thing where I say, well, it's only March. They have time to fix it. I do not do that, because I know time is of the essence. And when you get to September and October, you're trying to fix problems that maybe you can find a way to fix in October, but rarely can you fix it in October. And I always tell you, those are March problems. March. One person says, why do people think Will Levis is going to get anything more than a 7th round pick? I mean, Levis is going to be like, it's going to be a pick swap. Like, you trade a pick at the end of the 4th and Levis, and you get a pick in the middle of the 4th. Like, that's what's going to happen. One person says, you should go watch Kyle Brandt from this morning about the Titans drafting Jeremiah Love. Why? What'd he say? Maybe they told him something. I don't know, but you'll have to tell me what he said. Instead of telling me to go watch it, just tell me what he said. Jason says, you'd feel better if we actually saw Ward and Ridley have any chemistry at all. I mean, I think that they worked together last offseason. They worked together through training camp. They played 7 games together. And I think Calvin Ridley is a very, very hardworking player. That is what everybody says over there. I have no questions about his chemistry with Cam Ward. I think he'll be fine this year. One person says, can we get a new mascot other than a dang raccoon? So I do want to talk about this. PK got into it on Twitter with T-Rack. I'm not a fan of T-Racs. I would get rid of T-Rac if I bought the team. I think it's stupid. I get it. It's the state animal. But again, I think it's stupid. We should have like a giant Titan as our mascot as Titans fans. But I want to tell you this. When it comes to T-Rac, Floyd told me that when they were rebranding in 99, Bud Adams called a secret meeting. It was him, Jeff Fisher, Steve Underwood, Don McLaughlin, the real heads of state of the organization. And Bud Adams said, I got to show you something. It's a secret. Don't tell anybody. And he opened the door, and in walked a raccoon. And Floyd told me, he said he looked at it and goes, what? And Bud Adams was like, it's the state animal. And they all looked at each other like, okay. And because of that, that's why T-Rac is the mascot. And I don't think Amy's going to change it because Bud loved that raccoon. So you're stuck with the raccoon. I'm sorry about it. For whatever that's worth. One person says, we love our Titans, not the Tennessee Oilers, but we sure look like we are the Tennessee Oilers. I was not a Tennessee Oiler fan when they became the Titans. That's when I became a Titan fan. I kind of feel the same way. I went to the first game at Vandy in 98, but it wasn't like I had some serious attachment to the Oilers. I mean, I guess technically they were my team, but I didn't. I knew Steve McNair and Eddie George and Al Del Greco, and that was it. And like maybe Frank Wycheck. That's it. And by week 3 of the 99 season, I was sitting there talking about, hey, Benji Olsen has got to play better. I mean, what they've got to do, they've got to blah, 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 blah. But again, what we think doesn't matter. They don't care. They do not care. They want to be the Tennessee Oilers. They want to spite the city of Houston. That's what they're going to do. One person did talk about connecting the Titans to David Njoku. So Will on Music Row says, I keep seeing Njoku to the Titans, and I can't make sense of that. In order, I like Bailey, Styles, and then Love, but my main worry is we have no home run hitter on offense. I agree with you about the home run hitter on offense. I think the Titans need a dynamic playmaker on offense, and I think Jeremiah Love could be that guy. That said, on the David Njoku front, I have seen a little bit of that as well. The connecting the Titans to Njoku and things on Twitter and whatever. They're paying Daniel Bellinger $8 million. Like, he's the tight end. He and Gunnar Helm are the tight end. That's it. They're not going to go sign David Njoku. They made a day one free agent signing. And even though they took a Scarbini tight end and paid him $8 million, and I believe if you pay a Scarbini tight end like a starting tight end, you're still going to end up with a Scarbini tight end. They're telling you they don't think he's a Scarbini. And that's what it's going to be. So, sorry. Like, that's it. That's their tight end. 19 catches last year. That's their tight end. Okay, I do want to hit on the basketball from over the weekend. And I am not going to pretend that I am something I am not. I am not a basketball Benny. I am not Joe Rexroad, who is sitting there looking at bracketology around Thanksgiving. I am a college basketball fan from the standpoint that I watch my team. My team is Louisville. So when Louisville's on TV and I'm not doing anything else, I'll watch the game. Now that we're into the tournament, I am going to watch Louisville and Vanderbilt and Tennessee when they're on. That's going to be something where Lindsay says to me, oh, well, what about so-and-so? Sorry, can't. Vanderbilt game's on. Sorry, can't. Tennessee game's on. Sorry, can't. Louisville game's on. But for most of the season, I don't do that. And then I always get sucked back in after the Super Bowl. So every year, college basketball will be on, and I'll think about when I was a kid, and I used to love college basketball, and I remember it was a Saturday in December of 2007, and I remember going and getting breakfast because College Game Day was on that morning, and I was like, I am going to watch college basketball all day today. I love college basketball. I even played the college basketball video game as a kid. I worked in college basketball. I was on the radio in the number one college basketball market in America. And then I moved here. And I just can't get into it in November. I can't get into it in December. Even in January, I struggle a little bit. But then once football season's over after the Super Bowl, it's just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. And that's what happened this weekend with the SEC basketball tournament. Because I've started watching college basketball again with the start of the conference tournaments. And so I have a handful of takes that let's just get to them. First of all, congratulations to Vanderbilt. My dad and I went to the SEC championship game yesterday. You know, my dad's been a Vanderbilt fan for 50 years, and I don't think he ever thought he'd see him play in the SEC championship. And so we went to the game, and we had a great time. Number one, we need to acknowledge Vanderbilt right now is wiping their asses with the University of Tennessee toilet paper. They are blowing their nose on old Rocky Top. And that's across all sports. Vanderbilt dominated Tennessee in football this year. Vanderbilt beat Tennessee 2 out of 3 in men's basketball this year. And Vandy beat them in women's basketball. Last year, Vanderbilt outplayed Tennessee in baseball and won the SEC. Now, Tony Vitello is in San Francisco, and we're going to see if Tennessee baseball remains at the same level that they were with Tony V, and we'll see if they're going to be better than Vanderbilt this year. But as of right now, Vanderbilt is better at everything than Tennessee. They are better at football. They are better at men's basketball. They are much better at women's basketball. And currently, they're better at baseball. And I think that has to kill Tennessee fans. And I don't think Tennessee fans want to admit it, but it is the truth. And I find this to be so ironic. And the reason I say it's so ironic is because we all know why Vanderbilt's good at sports, right? Vanderbilt has put their money where their mouths are. I don't think that if Floyd came alive today, he would be able to process what Vanderbilt has become. And I think Vanderbilt has one of the best athletic directors in the country, and Candace Lee. Her coaching hires have been grand slams. Mark Byington, Shea Ralph at the women's basketball, Clark Lee, whom she showed faith with, sticking with him after 2023, I think has turned that around. I think, again, College Game Day multiple times in the same season for Vandy football. I don't think Floyd would be able to understand it, because he comes from the thinking that Vanderbilt used to be for years, which was Vandy has the money, they're just not going to spend it. And now they're spending the money. And I find it so ironic that Vanderbilt is now beating Tennessee, because when paying the players became legal, Tennessee fans and the Tennessee athletic department, they thought they were going to get out in front of this, because they started one of the first collectives, Inspire Sports, and they went and signed one of the first big NIL deals with Nico Iamaleava, and they thought, we are going to buy championships now, because nobody is going to put their money where their mouths are, like the University of Tennessee. And I thought that was a possibility too. And since then, I don't think any of Tennessee's programs are outpacing where they were before NIL. I think the football program is the same. I think the basketball program is the same, which is consistently good, by the way. I think the women's basketball program is the same, if not a little worse. And Tony Vitello was coaching well before NIL, but baseball certainly is doing. And I think when Tennessee fans, when you could pay the players, they thought, we're going to take advantage of this. We're going to dominate. And it's actually been Vandy. It's been Vandy that has taken advantage of the new rules and has elevated their entire athletic department. And I know Tennessee fans will just say, well, this is a one-year thing, and after this, I'd like to see how Vandy does. Congratulations to Vandy. Vandy has one good year, and now Vandy thinks they're all it. I don't think Vanderbilt's going away, guys. When you're flipping recruits from Georgia in football, you've got something cooking. Number 2, the SEC championship yesterday. My dad and I went. Wonderful basketball. And it felt like a true heavyweight fight. And both teams wanted it. And I wanted Vanderbilt to win. I wanted Vandy to have an SEC title. And I've done this long enough that I think you guys have been through this long enough. But I do feel like, I think we can all agree, that the conference championships really don't matter. I mean, as of tomorrow, when we start the first 4, whatever happened last weekend doesn't matter. It's all about surviving and advancing this tournament. It's all about the matchups in this tournament. And it has nothing to do with what happened in the conference tournaments. And the committee treated it that way by giving Vanderbilt a 5. But those 2 teams on the floor yesterday, they wanted an SEC championship. And again, I think it was a battle. I think Arkansas, in the end, was the better team. Vanderbilt's bigs, I thought, did not meet the challenge with Arkansas. Arkansas shot the crap out of the ball. Darius Acuff, bad boy. I thought Mark Byington made a questionable substitution decision in the second half that really hurt them, taking Duke Miles out of the game when they had Arkansas on the ropes. Vanderbilt could have won yesterday, but I didn't walk away from the game thinking they should have won. It was just, I think, a good game. And that, even though we're screwing around with everything when it comes to college sports, the idea of those teams laying it on the line because Vanderbilt wanted to win the SEC and Arkansas wanted to win the SEC, and again, it has no effect on the tournament. I think it's great. That was great basketball yesterday. Number 3, the seeding. Vanderbilt's 5 seed represents 2 things, one of which bothers me, the other one doesn't. You know, number 1, most people thought Vanderbilt was a 4. Some metrics pointed to the fact that Vanderbilt should have been a 3. A 5 was, in my opinion, a slap in the face, especially after Vanderbilt beat Florida this weekend. And that does bother me. But the truth is, if you thought Vanderbilt should be a 4 and you're upset because Vanderbilt is a 5, there's really not that big of a difference between being a 4 and a 5. You know, again, the difference is playing a 12 seed versus a 13 seed. That's roughly the same. And then 4 plays 5 in the second round. And if you get to the Sweet 16, you're playing the 1 seed. If you're the 4 seed, you're playing the 1 seed. If you're the 5 seed, you're playing the 1 seed. And so the way I look at it is Nebraska's a 4, Vanderbilt's a 5. I think you can make the argument that Vanderbilt should be a 4 over Nebraska, but they probably would be playing Nebraska in the second round anyways, or whomever Nebraska plays. They probably would be playing them in the second round anyways, so it doesn't really matter. So for Vanderbilt fans that are upset because Vanderbilt was comically underseeded, yes, that is wrong, but I don't think it makes much of a difference. The thing that does bother me is that I feel like Vanderbilt is a 5 seed for the same reason that I felt like Vanderbilt never got credit for what they were doing during the football season. You can put all these blind resumes out there and just put it on paper and say, okay, who's better? And in both football and in men's basketball, Vanderbilt, in my opinion, outranked other teams that were ahead of them. I thought Vanderbilt had a better resume in football than Notre Dame, but nobody ever talked about them. It was all about Miami. It was all about Notre Dame, and nobody wanted to include Vandy. And every time the committee rankings came out, it was obvious to me that the committee looked at Vanderbilt, saw the helmet, and said, well, Vanderbilt can't be very good. They're Vanderbilt. And I kind of feel like the same thing happened yesterday. That with all the facts and the info and the data, Vanderbilt should have been at least a 4 seed, maybe a 3 seed. But instead, they sat there in the committee room and they said, that's Vanderbilt. Make them a 5. And I don't know what Vandy has to do in order to get rid of that 40 years of brand bias that people are holding against it. But this is not the same Vanderbilt. And I don't know how you can look at the landscape of what's happening and think this is the same Vanderbilt. I mean, I'll tell you right now, Tennessee fans, they know it's not the same Vanderbilt. They don't want to admit it, but they know it. And I hate that in both football and men's basketball, when we got to the subjective committees, I believe, looked at Vanderbilt and held their brand from the past 30 years against them and not what they had done this season in football and this season in basketball. Number 4, Tennessee is a 6, and they are drawing the winner of Miami, Ohio, and SMU. And I think that's a good draw. And the reason why is I don't think Miami of Ohio is very good. I don't think Miami of Ohio should have made the tournament. I talked to Hoops Peterson over at VSiN, the betting channel, over the weekend when I was on Sirius, and I asked him, I said, Miami of Ohio, would they be favored in any 11-seed play-in matchup? And he said no. He said even a team like Stanford, who was absolutely not making the tournament, even Stanford would have been favored against them. SMU has opened as a 6.5-point favorite in Wednesday's first 4 matchup in Dayton. I think that's a good draw for Tennessee. And I think SMU is going to beat Miami of Ohio. I've watched SMU play twice. They beat Louisville at SMU, and then Louisville beat them in the ACC tournament. I watched both games. I think Tennessee should take care of SMU. So even though they got a 6, I think it's a good draw. The thing about Tennessee is I just don't know what kind of team they are night in, night out. You know, sometimes they play games in the SEC where I think this team could make a run. And then other weeks I look at Tennessee and I'm like, this team can't even make it to the NCAA tournament. I thought Vanderbilt outplayed Tennessee, and I was surprised they did. I told you bet everything on Tennessee, and Vanderbilt beat them. So I think Tennessee, even though they're a 6, I think they got a good draw. And then finally, my final SEC basketball take, if I could. I cannot stand Stephen Pearl, the Auburn coach, and I don't know why I can't stand Stephen Pearl. But I watched that UT Auburn game, I want to say Thursday. And when I watched UT play Auburn and they had Stephen Pearl just standing there on the sideline, I'm like, God, I cannot stand Stephen Pearl. And Stephen Pearl's bitching at the refs. And I don't know why I can't stand him. I don't know if it's because, like everybody, I don't think that Stephen Pearl should be the Auburn coach. I think Bruce set it up so Stephen could get the job. I think it is pure, unadulterated nepotism that has led to Stephen Pearl being the head coach of the Auburn Tigers. I also think he demonstrated this year that he's unqualified. They lost so many games this year and still thought they had a chance to make it. I think Bruce campaigning for his son makes it look even worse. I heard Joe Rexroad say that he talked to Stephen Pearl, and Stephen Pearl basically said, yeah, I know I've got 2 years, and I can at least appreciate that self-awareness. But God, he's obnoxious. Or at least I feel like he's obnoxious. He's never done anything to me. But for some reason, I see him on the sideline, and I just grit my teeth. And finally, congratulations to Casey Alexander, the former Belmont men's basketball coach, is taking the job at Kansas State. Good luck to him. You know, his bosses just fired his predecessor for cause because he ripped on the team in the post-game press conference, which is the most frivolous shit I've ever heard. So good luck, Casey, working for those guys. But Casey Alexander's a good man. And I've known Casey Alexander since I worked a camp for him when I was a rising college freshman in 2008. And Casey Alexander was always kind to me when he was at Lipscomb, always kind to me when he was at Belmont. I think he's a very good basketball coach. I think he's a great man. He's got a good family, and I am happy for him. This is a life-changing situation, life-changing money, and I, again, congratulate him. And it's kind of my big old final basketball thought. And TDG says, shout out to the TSU Tigers. Again, I said this last week, but I'll say it again. The word out of Louisville was Nolan Smith couldn't coach. And Nolan Smith has shut everybody up, led by me. And I owe Nolan Smith an apology, and I owe Lauren Walsh from Channel 4 an apology because Nolan Smith kicked some ass this year. So good luck to the TSU Tigers as well. Okay, that's going to do it for us here on the program. We are out today. Again, we'll probably be more Titans than basketball this week, though I am going to, give you my final 4 picks or whatever at some point along the way. And then I do think we're going to do the show Friday after the Vandy game, just to react to that as well, because I think UT plays kind of late. So we'll keep that in mind. That's it for us. We're out of here. Stillman and Company. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends. Thank you to 440 Sports and Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electric.